Speaking English with Anna.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Speak English with Anna podcast, your go-to place for leveling up your English and changing your life at the same time. I'm Mike.
And I'm Anna. Whether you're on your morning walk, stuck in traffic, or just winding down after a long day, thank you so much for hitting that play button. We are really excited to have you here. Mike, how has your week been?
You know, Anna, it's been busy, but if I'm being totally honest, I felt a bit stuck. Like I'm just going through the motions. Wake up, check my phone, go to work, check my phone again. It's a bit repetitive. How about you?
Oh, I completely relate to that. I felt like I was running on autopilot all week. You know that feeling when you drive home and suddenly you arrive, but you don't actually remember the drive? That was my whole week. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I started wondering, am I in control of my habits or are my habits controlling me?
I hear you. And you know what? That is actually a very common feeling. Science backs that up too. Did you know that by the time we are 35 years old, about 95% of our thoughts and behaviors are just unconscious habits? We basically become creatures of routine.
That is exactly why today's episode is going to be a game changer. We aren't just complaining about bad habits today. We're talking about how to break them. We're discussing how to rewire your brain, not with magic, but with science, small actions, and clarity.
That's right, because your brain isn't fixed, guys. It's always changing. And the best part, you can direct that change. Whether you want to stop procrastinating, feel more confident, or, of course, learn English faster, you don't need to wait for a crisis. You can start rewiring right now.
And here's the bonus for all our English learners out there. Throughout this episode, you're going to be naturally exposed to some powerful vocabulary, idioms, and phrasal verbs. So while you're learning how to shift your mindset, you'll also be improving your listening skills in a very organic way.
Exactly. We're going to use expressions like flip the switch, stuck in a rut, and neuroplasticity. But don't worry if something flies over your head. At the end of the episode, we will break down the tricky words so you can understand everything perfectly. If you're ready to break free from that autopilot mode and become the architect of your own mind, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us create more content for you.
All right, Mike, let's get started. Let's talk about the brain.
Let's do it. So, let's get right into the core of today's topic. Because the brain is always changing, the real question is, are you in charge of that change?
That is a great question. But before we answer it, we need to bust a huge myth right off the bat. A lot of people believe that they are hardwired.
Oh, I hear this all the time. People say things like, I'm just bad at languages, or I'm a nervous person, or I'm just lazy. That's who I am. They think their brain is this rigid machine that was programmed at birth and is locked in forever.
Exactly. They think it's set in stone. But neuroscience tells us something completely different. You are not a machine. Your brain is much more like a living ecosystem.
A living ecosystem. I like that. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. Think of your brain like a lush garden. Every thought you think, every behavior you repeat, and every emotion you feel, it is like planting a seed in that garden.
Okay, I'm visualizing it. So if I'm constantly thinking negative thoughts or telling myself I can't speak English, what happens?
Well, those are seeds too. If you water them with attention and repetition, they grow into weeds. Big, ugly weeds like self-doubt, fear, or procrastination. And if you let them grow, they take over the whole garden.
But the opposite must be true, right?
100%. If you plant seeds of focus, confidence, or practice, like studying English for 10 minutes a day, those seeds grow into strong, beautiful trees. You are literally growing your skills and your character.
This ability to change and grow isn't just a nice metaphor. It's backed by hard science. It's called neuroplasticity.
That's a big word. Let's break it down. Neuro refers to the neurons in your brain, and plasticity means plastic or moldable. It simply means your brain is capable of reshaping itself.
Right. Whether you realize it or not, your brain is adapting and rewiring every single day based on what you do. It's happening right now as you listen to this podcast.
And that is both exciting and a little bit scary, because it means if you aren't actively guiding that change, it is still happening, just maybe not in your favor. If you spend all day scrolling on your phone, your brain is wiring itself to be distracted. You are becoming a master of distraction.
Wow, that hits hard. So you're either consciously building a better garden or you're letting the weeds take over by accident.
Exactly, Mike. So the big takeaway for this section is this: you are not stuck. You are sculptable. And the more intentional you are with your thoughts and actions, the more powerful your transformation becomes.
Beautifully said. You are the gardener of your own mind. But knowing this is one thing, doing it is another. A lot of people wait until they feel like gardening before they pick up a shovel.
And that brings us to the biggest trap of all: motivation. Let's talk about that next.
Beautifully said, Anna. But speaking of action, here is a hard truth waiting to slap us in the face. Waiting to feel motivated is probably the biggest trap we all fall into.
Oh, absolutely. It's the classic excuse. We tell ourselves, I'll write that essay when I feel inspired, or I'll practice my English speaking when I feel energetic. We think that once we feel ready, then we will start.
Right. We treat motivation like it's a lightning bolt that's going to strike us from the sky and suddenly make us want to do difficult things. But it rarely happens, does it?
Rarely. And here's what neuroscience says. The opposite is actually true. Action comes first, motivation follows.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive. Can you explain how that works in the brain?
Sure. Your brain responds to physical movement and action. When you start doing something, even if you don't want to do it, your brain wakes up and says, "Oh, look, Mike is actually doing the work. This must be important. Let me release some chemicals to help him continue."
So the action itself triggers the motivation.
Exactly. Think of it like trying to start a campfire. You don't stand in front of the wood and wait for it to give you heat so you can light it. No, you have to strike the match first. You create the spark, and then the fire grows.
I love that analogy. You don't wait for warmth, you light the match. So bringing this back to English learning, let's say I'm tired. I just got home from work. The last thing I want to do is open a textbook or practice speaking.
That is the critical moment. If you wait to feel excited about grammar, you might wait forever. But if you just tell yourself, I will do this for only 2 minutes, and you open the book, guess what happens?
Once I start, it's usually not that bad.
Precisely. Once you start, your brain starts building momentum. It releases a little bit of dopamine, that feel-good chemical, because you are achieving something. Suddenly, 2 minutes turns into 20 minutes.
So the next time our listeners think, I'm just not feeling it today, what should they do?
They need to flip the script. Instead of saying, I need to feel ready to act, remind yourself, I need to act to feel ready.
Honestly, that is such a freeing mindset. It means you aren't a slave to your moods. You don't have to be happy or excited to make progress. You just have to move.
Yes, you can literally act your way into motivation. Every small step forward is a signal to your brain that says, we are building this, we are doing this. And speaking of building, let's talk about what happens when you repeat those actions over and over again. Let's talk about habits.
Let's get into it. So, we know we have to act to feel motivated. But once you start acting, how do you make it stick? How do you make it automatic?
That brings us to one of the most famous phrases in neuroscience. You might have heard it before. Neurons that fire together, wire together.
I love that saying, but it can sound a bit technical. Anna, can you break that down into plain English for us?
Of course. Basically, it's brain science for practice makes permanent. Every time you repeat a thought or an action, whether it's brushing your teeth, worrying about the future, or practicing English grammar, your brain connects the neurons involved in that action.
Okay, so it's like a connection.
Yes, Think of it like walking through a dense, tall forest. The first time you try to walk through the bushes, it is incredibly difficult. You have to chop down branches, move rocks, and it takes a lot of energy.
Right. That's like the first time I tried to learn phrasal verbs. It was a struggle.
Exactly. But if you walk that same path the next day, it's a tiny bit easier. The branches are already pushed back. If you walk it every day for a month, what happens?
It becomes a clear path. I can walk it without thinking.
Precisely. And if you walk it for a year, it becomes a superhighway. Your brain says, oh, Mike does this every day at 7 a.m. I'm going to make this the easiest, fastest route possible. That is how a habit is formed.
This is why even small habits matter so much. I think a lot of learners get discouraged because they think they need to study for 2 hours a day.
No, that's the wrong approach. Because of this wiring principle, repeating a habit for just 5 minutes a day is more powerful than studying for 5 hours once a week.
Because you are reinforcing that trail in the forest every single day, you're keeping the path clear.
Yes, you are installing a kind of mental software. Over time, these small daily actions don't just change what you do, they start to sculpt your identity.
That is profound. So if you practice English every morning, you stop being someone who is trying to learn English and you become an English speaker.
Exactly. The habits you repeat become who you are. And the beautiful part is, you get to choose what you repeat. You are not a prisoner of your past patterns. You are the architect of your future ones.
I love that. But Anna, there is a catch. You can't build a strong path in the forest if you keep running in different directions. You need to know where you're going.
That is true. And that brings us to something most people underestimate: focus.
Let's talk about that. We've talked about action and repetition, but Anna, there is a catch. You can repeat something 1,000 times, but you can't build anything solid if your attention is all over the place.
That is so true. And that brings us to something most people underestimate in the modern world: your focus.
It's getting harder and harder to focus these days, isn't it?
It really is. But think of your attention like a spotlight in a dark theater. Whatever you shine that light on, that is what the audience sees. And in your brain, whatever you shine your attention on, that is what gets built.
I like that visual. So if I focus on growth, learning English, or finding solutions, my brain starts building strong pathways to support those things.
Exactly. But let's be honest, Mike. What happens to most of us? Our spotlight is constantly jumping around. We watch a movie, but we're also scrolling on Instagram. We try to study English, but we have 5 tabs open on our computer.
Guilty as charged. I think we call that multitasking, right? We think we're being productive.
We think we're being productive, but your brain struggles to figure out what actually matters. If your attention is constantly switching, ping, notification, email, text, your brain actually starts wiring itself for distraction.
Wait, so we are training our brains to be distracted?
Yes, you are practicing distraction. You're wiring your brain for shallow thinking and scattered energy. And that is not just a productivity issue, it's a biological issue. Your brain literally changes based on what you focus on deeply.
That is a bit terrifying. So if I want to really learn English, not just hear it, but learn it, I need to stop the multitasking.
Ideally, yes. Focused attention sends a chemical message to the brain that says, hey, this specific information is important. Save this. Build more of this.
So for our listeners, listening to this podcast while washing dishes is great for review. But if you really want to rewire your brain and learn new vocabulary, what should they do?
You need to sit down, maybe for just 10 minutes, and give it your full, undivided attention. Don't just consume the content, engage with it. Write it down. Repeat the words out loud.
Because deep focus creates deep learning.
Exactly. There's a simple rhyme to remember this. Where your focus goes, your brain grows.
I'm going to put that on a sticky note. Where your focus goes, your brain grows. But Anna, sometimes it's not just distractions that break our focus. Sometimes it's our own feelings.
Oh, absolutely. Emotional loops. If you're not careful, they can trap you in the past.
Let's talk about that. How do emotions shape our brain? Now, this leads us to another hidden trap. We've talked about how focusing on the wrong things can wire your brain for distraction, but what about our feelings?
Oh, emotions. This is a huge topic. If you're not careful, emotional loops can either train your brain for success or trap you in the past.
That sounds intense. Trap you in the past. How does that work?
Let's break this down. Emotions are powerful. They're like glue for memory. But when we keep replaying the same emotional response, like anger, guilt, or sadness, it doesn't just stay as a one-time event.
Right. Like, let's say someone cuts me off in traffic. I get angry. That's a normal reaction, right?
Totally normal, but here's the danger. If you keep thinking about that driver all day, telling your coworkers about it and complaining about it at dinner, that anger turns into a mood.
Okay, so a reaction becomes a mood.
Exactly. And if you keep that mood for weeks or months, it becomes a temperament. And if you carry that temperament for years, it turns into a personality trait.
Wow. That is how someone becomes the bitter guy or the anxious person. It started with the reaction that they never let go of.
Yes, and the scary part is your brain starts wiring around that emotion. It builds a shortcut. So the next time something small happens, your brain doesn't even think. It just hits the anger button immediately because that is the path of least resistance.
So, how do we stop this cycle? How do we stop a bad moment from becoming a bad life?
You have to shorten what scientists call the refractory period.
Refractory period. That's a new term for me. What does it mean?
It's simply the amount of time it takes you to recover and reset after an emotional trigger.
So instead of stewing in it, sitting there boiling with anger for 4 hours, you try to cut it down to 4 minutes.
Exactly. You pause, you reflect, and you redirect. You say, okay, that happened. It was annoying, but I am not going to let this ruin my day. You interrupt the pattern.
That is powerful. Your emotional reaction doesn't have to become your identity. But speaking of strong reactions, let's talk about stress. It gets a bad rap, doesn't it?
It really does. Most people think stress is the villain. We try to avoid it at all costs. But actually, when used correctly, stress is one of your greatest tools for growth.
Wait, stress is good for us?
Not all stress is created equal. There's chronic stress, which is bad, but there's also short-term stress. Things like public speaking, taking a cold shower, or intense exercise.
Ah, I see. So when I push myself to speak English in front of a group and my heart starts beating fast, that's actually good.
Yes, that stress signals your brain, hey, this is important. We need to adapt to this challenge. It forces your brain to wake up and rewire itself to handle the challenge.
It's like going to the gym for your nervous system. If you lift heavy weights, your muscles get stressed, but then they grow stronger.
Precisely. But here's the key, Mike. Stress needs to be paired with recovery. If you stay in emergency mode all the time, answering emails at midnight, worrying about deadlines, doom scrolling on the news, that's when stress becomes toxic.
That is chronic stress. And without rest, that leads to burnout, fatigue, and even illness.
Think of stress like fire in a fireplace. It keeps your house warm and cozy. But if you let the fire out of the fireplace and onto the carpet, it burns the whole house down.
Use stress strategically, not reactively. I love that. But Anna, you mentioned recovery. There's one recovery tool that's better than all the others combined.
Oh yes, the one thing we all sacrifice but absolutely need. Let's talk about sleep.
Let's do it. We've covered action, focus, and managing stress. But Anna, that brings us to one of the most underrated tools for rewiring your brain. In fact, it might be the most important one.
Ah, yes. Sleep. The one thing we all claim to love, but we keep sacrificing like it's optional.
Right? We stay up late to watch one more episode or to finish just one more email. We wear our lack of sleep like a badge of honor. Oh, I only slept 4 hours. I'm grinding.
And that is a huge mistake. Here's the deal, Mike. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity for brain transformation.
Totally. You can take all the right actions, build new habits, and even embrace stress in healthy ways. But if you skip sleep, It's like planting a garden and never watering it. Nothing takes root.
That is a perfect analogy because here's what happens. When you're awake, you're gathering information. You're studying English, meeting people, learning new things, but the actual wiring, that happens when you are offline.
So during deep sleep, the brain isn't just turning off.
Not at all. During deep sleep, your brain acts like a construction crew on the night shift. It reinforces the strong neural pathways you used during the day, like those new English words you practiced. But it also does something else very cool.
What's that?
It prunes away the stuff that doesn't matter.
Prunes away like cutting branches?
Exactly. Your brain clears out the mental clutter, the random information, the stress, the distractions, so you have space for what's important. It's like cleaning your desktop and organizing your files.
That makes so much sense. So if I study English vocabulary for 2 hours, but then I only sleep 5 hours,
It's like typing a long, important document on your computer and then pulling the plug before you hit save. You might lose half of what you worked on.
wow, that really changes how I view rest. I always thought sleep was just downtime, but actually sleep is when the work gets locked in.
Yes, and it gets better. Even short naps or just quiet reflection during the day can help. Your brain needs silence to solidify what it is learning.
So for everyone listening who is trying to change their life, speak better English, or just feel more like themselves, don't just hustle all day. Honor your sleep.
It is not laziness, Mike. It is biology at work. You can grind all you want, but real transformation happens when your brain has the space to settle, sort, and strengthen.
That happens when you're off the clock and under the covers.
Precisely. And speaking of under the covers, we have used a lot of idioms and expressions today. My brain is getting a little full.
Same here. We've given our listeners' brains a full workout. So I think it's time we help them consolidate all this. Let's break down some of that tricky vocabulary we use today.
Great idea. Let's jump into the vocabulary breakdown. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today, from neuroplasticity to sleep habits. My brain is definitely awake now.
Same here. But we also tossed around a bunch of expressions, idioms, and next-level vocabulary today. So if you caught yourself thinking, wait, what does that mean? Don't worry, we've got your back.
That's right, it's time to unpack the English. Let's look at 5 key expressions we used in this episode so you can start using them in your own conversations.
Let's jump in. The first one we used right at the beginning was run on autopilot.
This is a great phrase. To run on autopilot means to perform tasks automatically without conscious thought. It comes from airplanes where the computer flies the plane.
Right. So in real life, we use it when we are doing a routine, like driving to work, brushing our teeth, or scrolling through our phones without really being present.
Exactly. You could say, I was so tired today, I was just running on autopilot. It's a very common feeling.
Okay, next one. We talked about changing your mindset and said you need to flip the switch.
I love this visual. Flip the switch means to suddenly change your behavior, mindset, or approach. Imagine a light switch on the wall. Click, it's dark. Click, it's bright.
So if you are feeling lazy and suddenly you decide, no, I'm going to exercise right now, you just flip the switch.
Precisely. It implies a quick, intentional decision to change.
All right, number 3. This one was a bit more emotional. We talked about not stewing in it.
Oh, this is a good one for describing anger. To stew literally means to cook something slowly in liquid, like a soup or a meat stew.
But when we talk about people,
When a person is stewing, it means they're sitting in their negative emotions, usually anger or resentment, for a long time. They aren't letting it go.
so if I had an argument with my friend 3 days ago, but I'm still angry and thinking about it constantly,
You are stewing in it, and as we learned, that is terrible for your brain.
got it. Next up, we use the gardening term, prune away.
Yes, to prune means to cut off unwanted or dead parts of a plant so the rest can grow better.
And in the context of our brains,
It means to remove unnecessary things. During sleep, your brain prunes away weak memories or clutter so that the strong memories can survive. You can also say, I need to prune away some bad habits.
that is very useful. And finally, our last word of the day, underrated.
We use this to describe sleep. If something is underrated, it means it is not appreciated or valued as much as it deserves to be.
So people think it's not important, but actually it is very important.
Exactly. You could say, this restaurant is underrated, meaning the food is amazing, but nobody talks about it. Or listening practice is the most underrated part of learning English.
All right, those are 5 powerful phrases to add to your vocabulary toolkit. Try using just one of them today in a sentence. It will really help your English sound more natural and confident.
Absolutely. And listeners, if this episode sparked something in you, don't let it fade. Take what you learned, whether it's the 2-minute rule or prioritizing your sleep, and start today.
Remember, your brain is already changing. You just have to guide it. Every time you repeat a habit, shift a thought, or practice English with us, you're not just learning a language, you're rewiring your identity.
Beautifully said, Mike. Before you go, make sure to grab that free PDF in the description below to lock in today's learning. It has the full transcript and all these vocabulary words defined for you.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please do us a huge favor. Like, subscribe, and share the Speak English with Anna podcast with a friend who needs it. We have tons of exciting content coming your way.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay intentional, stay curious, and keep building the mind and voice you are proud of.
See you in the next episode, everyone. Bye.